Call to order the meeting of the August 3rd, 2021 Cleveland County Commissioners. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. I'd like to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation. Is there anyone present tonight that would like to lead us in the Pledge and the Invocation? If not, I'm going to ask Commissioner Hutchins if he would do that for us.
Please stand, face the flag, salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our head. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the many opportunities we had that's happened today. We thank you for the new businesses coming to our county that give our residents good jobs and a way of life. We ask you to put your hands upon our safety personnel. We thank you for the firemen in here, the ones that wasn't able to attend. We ask you to put your hands upon the law enforcement and keep them safe. We ask you to give us knowledge and wisdom that we can conduct business for our county tonight. We ask all this and all believers say, amen.
Amen.
Appreciate everybody being here tonight. I'd like to start off by recognizing any elected officials we have here tonight.
Register of Deeds.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, any veterans that are here tonight, would you stand and give us your branch of service?
U.S. Army.
Thank you for your service.
Any over here? Johnny Hudson, you right here.
Army, North Carolina Army National.
Johnny Hudson, U.S. Army. We do a pin we have for the county seal with the veterans rocker. You guys have one? If not, would you come forward? Let me give you one. That's the county seal with the veterans rocker. I tell you, we appreciate your service. Appreciate your service.
Thank you. And I'd like to recognize any public service people here tonight, law enforcement and fire, if you would tell us your name. And
Danny Howe, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
thank you. You want to start over here?
Dan Steve, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Steve Hamer, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Brian Taylor, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Billy Fortenberry, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Robbie Hall, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Kareem Davis, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Zach Lewis, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Gabe Tippett, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Matt Lewis, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Chris Mooney, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Matt Lewis, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Chip Davis, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department.
Clint Dean, Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department. Bobby Ferguson, Cleveland Fire Department.
We thank you all for your service. Now I'd like to recognize any county department heads, if you would stand and give us your
Kristen Reese, Economic Development.
Martha Thompson, Deputy County Attorney.
Carrie Melton, Assistant County Manager.
Chris Martin, Planning.
Sherry Lavender, Tax Administration.
Barry Davis, Emergency Management, Fire Marshal.
thank you for all you do. And we have Dr. Hurst from Cleveland Community College. We appreciate you being here tonight. Have I missed anybody? Okay. I'd like now to have a motion to adopt the proposed agenda. Are there any items that need to be added or deleted?
I make a motion, we adopt the proposed agenda.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. Now we're to a special recognition, and we'll call on Perry Davis, Emergency Management Director and Fire Marshal, to come forward for that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's an honor to come before you tonight to recognize the goodwill and dedication of two Cleveland County residents that have taken the time to
put the lives of others before their very own. On June the 7th of this year, an automobile accident occurred in the 1400 block of Popeville Road. After receiving the 911 call, our communications center dispatched the appropriate agencies, which involved the Cleveland Fire Department and Cleveland County EMS, and informed them that the accident involved a power pole that had been struck. They were later informed the vehicle involved was also on fire. Chris Mooney, who was a new volunteer member of the Cleveland Fire Department and works as a deputy with our sheriff's office, responded from his home to the scene. He was not working at this time and responded as a volunteer. He lives in close proximity to where the accident occurred, which allowed him to be on the scene rather quickly. When firefighter Mooney arrived, the vehicle was on fire. He was met by Mr. Dionisio Martinez Badillo, who lives across from where the accident occurred. Mr. Badillo's wife had actually reported the accident to 911. These two gentlemen noticed the victim was entrapped inside the car with flames inching toward the victim. They tried to open the door to the vehicle, and it was jammed as a result of an accident. Seconds later, through their strength and determination, they were able to successfully gain access to the victim using their will and might to open the door that was jammed. This allowed them to remove the victim from the vehicle and get them to a safe location where they could receive treatment from our EMS personnel. The actions of these two individuals were nothing short of heroic, and they both are well deserving of recognition for their actions, going above and beyond to put themselves in harm's way so a fellow Cleveland County citizen or resident would live to see another day. And I think the clerk has a proclamation.
I do. Mr. Chair, we have two proclamations. Proclamation honoring firefighter Chris Mooney. Whereas on June 7th, 2021, volunteer firefighter and off-duty Cleveland County Sheriff's Deputy Chris Mooney demonstrated bravery and heroism when he took action in a life-threatening situation. And whereas Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department was dispatched to a motor vehicle accident with injuries in the 1400 block of Popeville Road. While en route to the scene, the call was updated to a vehicle fire with an occupant trapped inside. Whereas firefighter Mooney selflessly and without hesitation quickly jumped into action upon his arrival to the scene, and along with the help of citizen Dionisio Martinez Badillo, the duo successfully freed the occupant from the burning vehicle before it became completely engulfed with flames. Now therefore be it resolved, the Cleveland County Board of Commissioners express their sincere appreciation and gratitude to volunteer firefighter Chris Mooney for his courageous and heroic acts of bravery during the call of duty. Signed this the 3rd day of August 2021. Our next one is from Mr. Badillo. Whereas on June 7th, 2021, there was a motor vehicle accident with injuries in the 1400 block of Popeville Road. Mr. Badillo, who resides across from the scene of the accident, demonstrated bravery and heroism when he quickly acted in the life-threatening situation. And whereas Mr. Badillo's wife was the 911 caller who advised dispatch a vehicle had struck a power pole, causing the vehicle to catch fire with an occupant trapped inside. Mr. Badillo met the volunteer firefighter Chris Mooney when he arrived on scene to render aid to the vehicle driver. And whereas Mr. Badillo selflessly jumped into action along with the help of volunteer firefighter Mooney, the duo successfully forced the car door open, freeing the occupant from the burning vehicle, placing the driver in a safer location away from the vehicle before it became completely engulfed with flames. Now therefore be it resolved, the Cleveland County Board of Commissioners expresses their sincere appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Badillo for his courageous and heroic acts of bravery in a dangerous situation to help someone else in need. Signed this the 3rd day of August 2021.
Chris Mooney, we appreciate your bravery and what you did, your service. Thank you so much. How about some of the firemen coming up and having a picture made with you?
Fire department's got a couple awards that we would also like to give to both these gentlemen. gentlemen. Super proud of both of you. It's a testament to who you are and what you've done for your community. So the first one, the Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department Award for Citizen Bravery, is presented to Denicio Martinez-Medillo for his heroic actions performed on June 7th, 2021. Thank you. The second award is one that we very rarely get to present. It's an honor. It's very rare that it happens. Glad that it's very rare that it happens. But this award is called the Firefighter Melton Award of Valor. It's presented to Mooney for his heroic actions performed on June 7th, 2021 by Cleveland Volunteer Fire Department, and it's got John 15:13 at the bottom. Greater love hath no man to lay down his life for one's friend. Chris, thank you. And just one thing about, it's named after Gene Melton. Some of his family are up front. Gene passed away in the 79 Uptown Fire. He's a lot of times associated with the Shepherd Fire Department, but he was also a member of the Cleveland Fire Department. He was a up-and-coming young man and member. It was a tragic loss, but again, this is named in his honor. Thank you.
Okay, if we can have the tallest ones in the back, and we're gonna make 2 rows.
Phyllis, I'm gonna try to go this way, just so I'm not standing over. If you guys will look this way, sorry.
Oh, here, let me move that.
I got it. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
See ya.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do have, the overflow room is full, so we're just going to take a few minutes to have, we've had one person sign up for citizen recognition, Mr. Williams, so he's making his way up here now.
Okay, thank you. How many people are?
Just one.
Can we go to some empty seats?
Yes.
We have about 10 seats.
April's downstairs, so I'm helping, she's helping me. It's full. 20 some.
Thank you all for being patient. You know, we are trying to practice social distancing again. It looks like we're headed in that direction again. We have people in another room. And now that part of this room has cleared out, we're going to allow some more people to come in. And the next thing on the agenda is citizens recognition. And the one person that signed up is in the other room, so he'll make his way up.
Yes, we can go over the consent if you want to wait.
You'd like me to present the consent agenda while he makes his way up?
And that would be fine. So I will now call on Brian Epley, County Manager, to present the consent agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Bridges, thank you, and members of the board. Several items for consideration as part of your consent agenda for this evening. Item A are the minutes from your June 1st regular commissioner meeting. Item B and C are your monthly tax reports. Item B is your June 2021 collection report. Pleased to report that we closed out the fiscal year June 30th with a 98.57% collection rate, and as we discussed at your last meeting, that is an all-time high for Cleveland County, and I'm continue to be impressed by the performance of our tax collections department. Item C is your abatement and supplement report for the month of June 2021. Abatements totaled $728.87. Supplements totaled $20,710.76. Item D is from the Health Department. It's budget amendment number 1 on the new fiscal year. This is a request to budget $2,500 and a grant funds received from High Point University. And these funds were in return for clinical rotation in our pharmacy department and will be budgeted to offset existing expenditures there in the pharmacy. Item E, also from the Health Department, budget amendment number 2 on the year, is a request to budget $35,849 in grant funds that'll be used for maternal and child health purposes. Item F is up from our planning department, and this is a request to set a public hearing for September the 7th, 2021 for case 21-07. The request specifically is to rezone from general business to restricted residential for parcel 14500, which is located at 1113 Stony Point Road. Again, the request this evening is simply to set the public hearing for September the 7th. Item G is a request to amend a previous appointment to the Animal Services Advisory Board. These appointments were made back in December of 2020, and we'd like to correct the original appointments for the licensed veterinarian and law enforcement officer that were made for 1 year but should have been 3-year appointments, and so asking again for that technical correction. And finally, for consideration is item H, which is again another amendment to one of your citizen or 2 of your citizen advisory boards, specifically including the removing of seat 10 from the Shooting Range Advisory Board, as well as the commissioner appointee to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Board, and then staff will prepare applicants and present an opportunity for the Board of Commissioners to reappoint these seats at a later date. And that concludes your consent agenda for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Commissioners, you've been presented the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or questions for Mr. Epley?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you very much. So now we will back up to citizens recognition. Madam Clerk, will you read the?
Yes. The citizen recognition portion of the meeting is an opportunity for persons wishing to appear before the commission to do so. Each presentation will be limited to 3 minutes. The board is interested in hearing citizen concerns, yet speakers should not expect comment, action, or deliberation on subject matter brought up during this segment. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate county agency.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one person tonight. Mr. Robert Williams, would you come forth and give us your name and address?
Robert Williams, 814 East Stagecoach Trail. That's a Lawndale address. I live in the middle of Falston. I signed up tonight for one reason, the big crowd downstairs. In fact, I wrote the subject, crowd control. I've never seen anything so unorganized, and I still don't know what's going on. I understand up here we're all spaced out for social distance, and I want to let you know, in case none of you have looked in that room downstairs, we're packed in like sardines. There's no social distancing downstairs. No masks given out. Totally unorganized, unplanned. I don't understand why, and I don't understand why somebody was not down there telling all of us at one time what was going on. I still don't know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, tonight we have, maybe the reason for all the people here, we have 5 public hearings. And we'll have to be patient, and as we go through these, if people need to speak that are downstairs, we'll have to make some sort of accommodation.
Mr. Chair, there is hand sanitizer and mask available to everybody downstairs.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to start off with, well, first I guess we need to hear the rules about the public hearings.
Public hearings. After the public hearing has been opened, persons wishing to speak for or against the proposition will be asked to come forward and first state his or her name and address. All comments from the public are to be directed strictly to the board. There are no comments directed at other members of the audience. If a speaker has a question, that question is to be directed to the chair. No one will be allowed to speak at the hearing more than once unless the chair recognizes a speaker a second time for rebuttal of information brought forth after the speaker has spoken. The original presentation by a speaker will be limited to no more than 5 minutes. The rebuttal presentation will be limited to no more than 3 minutes.
Thank you. And very exciting public hearing, Project Laser, and I'm going to call on Kristen Reese to come talk to us about that.
Good evening, Chairman Bridges, Commissioners. I'm excited to be here this evening to present 2 contracts related to an economic development project, Project Laser, that you mentioned that will require your consideration for approval this evening. Technically, we can now actually refer to the company by its name, which is Steffes, because the project was officially announced today out of Governor Roy Cooper's office in Raleigh, followed by an announcement in Cleveland County where Chief Deputy Secretary Jordan Wichard made the official announcement here locally. So you may hear me vacillate a little bit and refer to it by Project Laser and by the company name Steffes. So those 2 items that we have are needing your consideration for approval this evening. The first one being the Cleveland County Economic Development Incentive Grant for the project, as well as the sale of shell building number 3 for the Project Laser or Steffes. So a quick recap on property history. Before you should have also a copy of my staff report, which details everything that I'm going to be reviewing. But Cleveland County owns the property at 620 Plato Lee Road in Shelby. That consists of a little over 19 acres where the city of Shelby and Cleveland County jointly partnered together to construct a 100,000 square foot industrial shell building that was marketed specifically for economic development purposes with the sole mission to be that we could attract a quality manufacturer that would create jobs for the citizens of our community. The proposed sale of this building on Plato Lee Road, the shell building, it was marketed, in terms of the proposed sale, it was marketed for sale in the sum of $6.975 million. The company has proposed to purchase that property for that asking price, $6.975 million, which is the fair market value of the property. Net proceeds of that sale would be divided equally between the county and the city. Quick recap on Project Laser or Steffes. Fantastic company. These are the types of companies, this is the type of company that you want in your community. We're super excited in their interest in moving forward with a great project here locally in Shelby. They plan to purchase the building, upfit it to meet their critical specifications, and then commence new manufacturing operations there. This company has locations across the U.S., and so this expansion into Cleveland County is going to support a lot of their customers on the East Coast. They anticipate creating approximately 130 new jobs with this project over the course of 5 years and investing a little over $20 million into the project. Important to note in terms of the incentive grant that we're proposing and asking for approval on, this is a 3-year grant that we are proposing. We've included a breakdown of the new capital investment by those 3 years and those new jobs per year for the 3 years stated within the contract. The incentive grant percentage will be, that we're requesting, is 20% of the company's net new investment that would be multiplied by the county's general tax rate of 0.005475. I can stand here all night and tell you the positives about this project and just how great the company is. They've been wonderful to work with on the front end, and the jobs that they're going to be creating are the types of jobs that we want in our community. Diverse, high-paying, with average wages that exceed our county average. Not only will they create new jobs, but the tax revenue that they'll, or the new tax revenue that will be created will certainly impact our economy in a positive way. You all know, I've said this time and time again when we talk about economic development projects, specifically manufacturers, the multiplier effect that they have is the highest among any sector, comparatively speaking. And so the vendors and the service providers and local businesses that they'll be utilizing and doing business with will also be positively impacted. I'm happy to answer any questions about the contract. You have the parcel ID and an aerial of the parcel on the screen for review, but any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners, have any questions or comments before we open the public hearing?
No questions?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against Project Laser, please come forward and state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Jason Hurst, and I'm at 715 Cedar Hill Drive in Shelby. And I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving as president of Cleveland Community College. I also have the honor of serving as chair of Cleveland County's Economic Development Partnerships Executive Committee. And again, I'm also a resident of this great county. Earlier today, we celebrated the official and exciting announcement of Steffes and learned more about their plans to purchase the Plato Lee Road Shell Building number 3, which will eventually house their new manufacturing operations. I've met with the company representatives on several occasions and have great confidence in their future development plans right here in Cleveland County. Today, I'd like to ask the board for your approval of the agreement for Steffes' purchase of the Plato Lee Road property, as well as your approval of the proposed county incentive grant for Steffes. Approval of the purchase agreement will ensure that the company can proceed with development of an innovative manufacturing facility in our community as planned, and approval of the incentive grant will reward them for 3 years after they have made significant new investments in our community. Additionally, I'd like to highlight a few reasons why I believe the Board of Commissioners should support these two items that are before you tonight. The new, diverse, and high-paying careers that Steffes will create will be a welcome addition to our community. With average annual wages that exceed Cleveland County's existing average wage and an excellent benefits package for their employees, equates to a win-win for our community and the local job seekers. While the primary goal of our local economic development efforts is to attract companies who will create high-quality jobs for our residents, let's not forget the overwhelming positive impact that the company's new investment in our community will have on our local tax base. New tax revenue generated for projects such as this one helps our community in a variety of ways. It further stabilizes our tax base and tax rates and allows us to expand county-supported programs and resources. Lastly, we anticipate that local small businesses will be positively impacted by Steffes locating in Cleveland County, as many will have the opportunity to potentially serve as a vendor or service provider for that company. This is an example of a tremendous multiplier effect that Kristen talked about earlier that manufacturing has on our communities, as we will see virtually every local business sector positively impacted by this project. And in closing, I want to thank you for your continued support of the county's economic development efforts. And I want to especially commend all of you guys that are sitting here today for the risk that you took, the courage that you had to have in making this decision. It would have been very easy for you to have stopped the project. I mean, quite frankly, we were in the middle of a global pandemic, and you guys had the faith, the courage, the discipline to stay the course. And I really think that we would not be here tonight had you not done that. So I just encourage you and urge you to support this, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any for me.
Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hurst. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against Project Laser, please come forward. Anybody else? I'm going to close the public hearing. And Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I attended the ceremony at 2 o'clock today, and it was very nice to see not only the owner, but his family and his other workforce development people there in support of the project and meeting and talking to them, and even some will be moving into the county, especially, I guess, is personnel operating it. So very seldom do you see a company with that big a name and family attending the same meeting with him. I think that's the first time that I've seen it with a family, so it was very nice to see that, and I appreciate that. And two, it's opportunity to provide those jobs for our citizens who need the job, to give them a lifestyle that they can enjoy their lives and continue on with the wages and the benefits that are going to offer.
Anybody else? I'd just like to echo the same things that Johnny said. I was there this afternoon too, and it was great to see the family atmosphere of the company. At this time, I am going to ask for a motion to approve or deny the sale of the Shell building to Project Laser and the Economic Development Incentive Agreement for Project Laser.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd be honored to recommend that we approve the sale of the building and the economic development incentive that we're going to give to the project.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you. The motion carries. Kristen, are there some company representatives here tonight you'd like to introduce?
We do. We have several company representatives here tonight, and I'd love for them to maybe stand, and if they would like to come up front and introduce themselves. We have, let's see, don't be shy. You speak so highly of them, and they're here, so come on up front, guys. I'm going to let each of them actually introduce themselves to you and their title, and
hello, I'm Paul Eidenchink. I'm co-president with Steffes Companies.
Thank you.
Todd Mayer, also co-president, Steffes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Peter Rakoff. I'm the CFO at Steffes.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paul Steffes, and I'm founder and chief innovation advisor for the company.
Appreciate it. And, you know, this afternoon, all the commissioners weren't there. I just wondered if we'd like to get a picture with all the commissioners as well as y'all, if you want to step up here. And we're going to go down there. What you want to do, John?
Would you like us to come up there?
Hey, you want to come up here?
come up here.
Oh, you decide. You decide.
We can. Tell us what you got some people. And we're going to give you a Cleveland County pen.
And I think Johnny's got a couple coming that way.
Appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I got one.
Yes, we got two. Johnny?
Yes. Do we get another pen?
I think we need two more.
I can go get some.
We'll get some and get them.
Yeah, I thought I had some. You got one? I think we got one.
They got it here. Oh, they got them. Okay, we're good. So,
Yep, let me get them like that. Okay,
are we good?
Yeah, everyone look at me. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you. Thanks again. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you again. Thank you.
It's all flat here, so.
Okay, and as we move right along, we have another public hearing from the Planning Department, case 2112, request to rezone property at 610 East Double Shoals Road from rural agriculture to manufactured home parks. And I'm going to call on Chris Martin, the planning director, to come talk us through this one.
Good evening, board. We have several items for you tonight. We have 3 rezoning requests and a text amendment. which I think this is a positive sign for the county that we see some movement and development. The first request is a request to change the zoning of a 10-acre tract of land. The property owner's the applicant, and he's asking to rezone his property from rural ag to manufactured home parks. The difference in these two zoning districts, with the rural ag, the uses that are allowed consist of residential, of course, and then some rural commercial. While manufactured home parks, the uses that are allowed are all residential and manufactured home parks. One of the key differences between these two districts is lot size. The rural ag requires a 3-acre minimum lot size, while the manufactured home parks require a 1-acre minimum in this area. So the petitioner is the property owner, Mr. Harold Keith Wright. He's asking to rezone an 11-acre tract from rural ag to manufactured home parks. The property is located on East Double Shoals Road on the Fallston Highway 18 side of Double Shoals Road, and it's on the south side of the road. The surrounding uses consist mostly of residential, agriculture uses, and a mobile home park across the road. And you can see it in the aerial photo that we have displayed on the screen. The surrounding zoning districts consist of rural ag, which is what the currently what the property is zoned, which you see represented by the green color, and the manufactured home park zoning, which is across the road and represented by the orange color on the screen. The land use plan says that this area should be projected as future residential, so both of these zoning districts would be consistent with that land use plan designation. We presented this case to the planning board, and after evaluation, they felt like the request would be an extension. If approved, it would be an extension of an existing zoning district, basically moving the manufactured home park district across the road to surround his property. And they voted unanimously to approve the project. That concludes my presentation on this case, and I can answer any questions.
Chris, what's the white?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Where you had that one, no, the other one you just left.
So the white color represents residential zoning,
So
and you'll find that along, mainly along Highway 18, Fallston Road. I imagine the orange that you see was probably applied to that area back when we did the county-wide zoning because of the mobile home park that's in that area.
So commissioners, do you have any more questions or comments before we open the public hearing? If not, I open a public hearing for case 2112, request to rezone property at 610 East Double Shoals Road from rural agriculture to manufactured home parks. Please come forward and state your name and address. So anyone wishing to speak for or against case 2112, request to rezone property at 610 East Double Shoals Road from rural agriculture to manufactured homes, please come forward, state your name and address. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and ask again if there's any questions or comments by the commissioners. If not, I will ask for a motion to approve or deny the request.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Motion carries. So Chris, I'm going to ask you to come back up and talk about case 2113, request to rezone property at 3827 Cliffside Road from residential to general business conditional for automotive sales.
So our second item is also a request to change the zoning map. The petitioner is Brett Pittman, and he's asking to rezone a small tract of land, about 1/4 of an acre, from residential to general business conditional use. And his intentions are to use the property as an auto sales business, used auto sales. And he's provided a site plan that you've got in your packet as well, showing how the property would be used. And basically, it would be used as it lies, with the building and the parking lot in the front. The property is on Cliffside Road, which is in that southwest area of the county. Mooresboro, Cliffside's what a lot of people call that area. The surrounding uses in that area are mostly residential. You can see like a auto type of business on that private road behind his parcel. But then you see a lot of single-family dwellings in that area. The land use plan calls this area future residential. So his requested zoning district doesn't necessarily comply with that land use plan designation. However, the land use plan has some language that talks about or encourages the reuse of a lot of these industrial and commercial buildings that are in the rural parts of the county. So staff, we feel like even though the requested district doesn't comply, the intended use of that or reuse of that building does comply with the language and the encouragement in the land use plan. And as a side note, the petitioner did get the landowner to sign the application. I believe there's relation. I believe it's a grandson relation. We did present this to the planning board. And in their meeting, they evaluated the request and felt like even though it's, like I was saying, even though it's inconsistent with the land use plan, that it would be reusing an existing building. And they also were hopeful that since the building's been vacant for a number of years, that reusing the building or allowing the reuse of the building would help improve the property. And they voted unanimously to approve the project, or approve the recommendation. And I can answer any questions on that one.
Commissioners, questions or comments? My thought was when I saw this that it would probably be a vast improvement of the property from the way it is now. So I'll open the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 2113, request to rezone property at 3827 Cliffside Road from residential to general business conditional for automotive sales, please come forward and state your name and address. Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 2113, request to rezone property at 3827 Cliffside Road from residential to general business conditional for automotive sales, please come forward. State your name and address. Okay, seeing no one, I am going to close the public hearing and ask the commissioners if they have any questions or comments at this time. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to rezone it from residential to general business.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you to come up and talk about Planning Department Case 2115, request to amend Section 12134 of the Cleveland County Unified Development Ordinance.
All right, so our next request is not a zoning map change request. It's actually a request to change some language in our code. Specifically, language within the water supply overlay district. The petitioner excuse me. There we go. So petitioner is asking to add language in the water supply ordinance that would allow other residential type development to be capable of asking for the 70% leniency that our code and the state's code allows for. And what I want to do is, what I want to do is give you a little bit of information about what the watershed is and the purpose, and then I'll swing back around to what the petitioner is asking for. So the watershed is basically an area of land where rainwater, stormwater drains into a specific point, and in our case, our water supply. We have some development ordinances that limit the development in the watershed with the goal of providing clean water to our citizens. And here we've got the definition of watershed and then also of the district. Next, I've got a map showing you where our watersheds have been designated. And what I want to do, or first of all, the designation comes from the state, the Department of Quality, Environmental Quality. But they're basically looking at your county and looking at where you're getting your water from, your drinking water, and they're following the topography of the land and determining where the water is draining from into that supply. So these are the areas in our county that they've designated as a watershed. So these are the areas that we apply that watershed ordinance to. Before I go on, you're going to hear me talk about 3 different types of development. You're going to hear me talk about single-family residence, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically a family's home. Non-residential, when I use that term, what I mean is commercial, office, churches, schools, that type of development. And then you're going to hear me use the term other residential, which is basically anything other than single-family dwelling. So you're looking at apartments and townhomes and condos when I use that term. And as far as the regulations in a watershed, we basically have 2 primary methods of regulating development in a watershed. The first is applied to the single-family residence, and it says that you can have 1 home per acre. And the intent, or the intent of that is to limit or to maintain the rural character and limit the amount of development, residential development in that area, so that you're basically limiting the pollution and stormwater and rainwater that's getting into your water supply. The other type of development method or regulation method that we have is what we call built upon area. And it basically says that other residential and non-residential projects can only build on up to 12% of a tract of land. And that's not a lot. It's a very limited, it's really limiting how much these commercial and housing projects can use of a piece of property. The state ordinance and the county ordinance also, in addition to that, they also provide what we can call a variance or leniency, and we call that the 70% option. And it is only applied or only capable of being used by the non-residential type development, so the churches, the schools, the retail, the offices. It basically says that staff can authorize the use of 70% of a piece of property on a project-by-project basis, and that we're required to track how much of the watershed is using that 70% option, and that we've got to monitor how much is being used and make sure that only up to 10% of the watershed, the total watershed, is being used. This next slide, we put this together to show you some data, basically to show you how much we have used thus far. And we're basically working with 2 watersheds in Cleveland County. We've got 3, but these are the 2 primary watersheds that we see. The third one's very small and in Kings Mountain's jurisdiction, so we rarely have to acknowledge it, that area. So these are the 2 watersheds that we work with. The first one is Watershed 4, or we call it the First Broad River Watershed, and there's 93,000, almost 94,000 acres in this watershed. So 10% would be 9,400 acres. We've allowed 14 acres to use the 70% variance. With the second watershed, Buffalo Creek or the Moss Lake watershed, there's 29,000 acres. We've allowed 3.7 acres or one project to use the 70% leniency. So that's not a lot. You know, Cleveland County is a rural county. If you think about it, our watersheds are in the most rural parts of our county. If you saw the map, it's in the north end and the southwest end. So the speed of development in those areas is you know, not as intense or fast as what you're going to see in Shelby or Kings Mountain. We've given that 70% option to about 8 different properties over the years. It has consisted of a couple churches, a couple retail stores, and a couple medical offices up in the Foston area. So historically, those have been the type of projects that have asked for it, these commercial retail type of projects. So that basically concludes my description of what the watershed is and how we regulate it and why we regulate it. Now, this slide is a repeat of the first slide. I want to swing back around it and repeat what the petitioner is asking for. If you remember, we had 3 different types of development: single-family dwelling. They get a break from the 12% limit because they're allowed to use all of 1 acre. You have non-residential type development. They get a break from the 12% limit because they can ask for the 70% variance. And then the third type of development is other residential, which is your multifamily townhome condo. That's the type of development that has been basically left in the cold. They don't have another option. They have to comply to the 12% built upon area by our code. So the petitioner, what they're asking for basically is to include them in the uses that can ask for the 70% variance, just like the non-residential commercial projects. And to achieve that goal, it'd be simply adding 3 words into our ordinance, and this is straight out of the ordinance for watersheds. It'd basically be adding other residential and non-residential uses up to 70%. And I hope that explains. You know, my goal was to explain what a watershed is and what the purpose of it is, and then to hopefully let that help explain what the petitioner is asking for. And I think tonight we've got basically have a couple options, you know, approve or deny this request. And I can answer any questions the board may have.
Commissioners.
I have a question. Okay, in moving this forward, it's 9,000 acres in one watershed. Okay, what happens if you get a large, say, 3, 4, 500 acre tract? Someone wants to build a big development. How does that go? Is that governed by stormwater runoff, legislator, your office, or whatever? Can you explain how that will be governed?
Yes. So, great question. If it's a single-family dwelling development, it would not be limited by the 12%. You know, the regulation for single-family dwelling would be 1 per acre. So that's one way we would regulate it. We would, the 1 per acre would identify that density issue and keep it a rural area. And as far as having to meet other ordinances such as stormwater and erosion control, those are separate ordinances that all development would still have to comply with. The state, you know, the DEQ, if you're grading over an acre of land, we all know that you're supposed to get an erosion control permit. Those type of regulations would still apply to those types of projects, regardless if they're in a watershed or not.
Any more questions or comments before we open the public hearing?
And I'll add one thing. With this slide, I just saw this and it made me think. You can see that we're really far away from our limit of 10%. you know, in Cleveland County, historically is a rural county, slower development, especially in our watershed areas. I think, you know, when you look at counties that are faster growing, more developed, like Wake, Mecklenburg, those are probably the counties that are going to have to monitor and be more selective about who they're giving these 70% variances to. But the numbers are small, but I think, you know, the reasons that Cleveland County compared to those counties is slower to develop, especially in our rural watershed areas.
Okay, I think we're ready to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 2115, request to amend section 12134 of the Cleveland County Unified Development Ordinance, please come forward and state your name and address.
Bill McCarter, 107 Plantation Court. Got some information coming around to you concerning this amendment, but to give you a little bit more background too, unfortunately I was around when the Watershed Ordinance was adopted in '94. And you can probably blame me for the fact that this amendment is now coming to you. I actually ran across an old newsletter, and it's still on the state's website, and that's what's coming around to you. It's called Streamlines. And this newsletter was published by the state in '95, or actually '96, and it talked about the amendments that were, or the changes that were made to the Watershed Ordinance in '95 after the original adoption in '94. So in '94, we took the model ordinance and we adopted what the state gave us. But we didn't go back in '95 and make all of those changes that the state recommended. And you can see I highlighted one line in there under the 1070 provision. The state's recommendation at that time was to change, at that time they called it a 570 provision. 5% of the watershed could be developed up to 70% density. So they changed that and gave you some more flexibility and allowed you to go to a 1070 provision option. And then to be used specifically for new residential and non-residential. So that provision was provided for you in 1995, but we just didn't pick it up, that wording. We did the 1070 change, but we didn't add that language in there to include new residential. So it's a very simple change that I simply missed in '95, and I apologize. I'm paying for it now. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 2115, request to amend section 12134 of the Cleveland County Unified Development Ordinance, please come forward and state your name.
I'm Spencer Borders. I'm at 1101 East Sanders Road in Cleveland County. I just wanted to kind of give a little bit more background on kind of some of the reasons, some of the other reasons besides just fixing a mistake. You know, one thing that I don't think anybody mentioned yet was that Cleveland, if you look at all the counties surrounding Cleveland County, those counties all already have this amended. So it's not something where we would be out hanging out there different from anybody else. So this is kind of a normal thing that we're asking for. Another thing, Chris mentioned this 14 acres out of 93,000 acres and 3.7 acres out of 29,000. I just did the math real quick. So this is, you know, we have the ability to get to 10% of the watershed to use this rule. And in both of those cases, you're talking, what's already been used is 1/100th of 1%. So we're probably not ever going to see in our lifetime or our kids' lifetimes this 10% reached in Cleveland County. I think that this is about economics, it's about growth. Henry, do you mind putting the watershed map back up? So this watershed here, we did the math on it too. Watershed in Cleveland County is 42% of the land. And currently, the way the ordinance is written, because of that 12% density requirement for multifamily, you know, imagine you want to build an apartment complex, and most apartment complexes are going to have a large parking lot. And so if a developer wanted to come to Cleveland County and build, he's not going to build anywhere in that watershed, because it would be economically not good to try to, you know, you'd have to buy such a much bigger parcel in order to do the same project. So that's where we're going. And you know, also 70% is kind of a scary number. You know, I can't imagine what 70% looks like on an 8-acre map, but you know, there's a project we're going to talk about next that, you know, that we're probably less than 18%. So, but we do feel like this, using this rule as opposed to trying to change the 12 to go up to something different is better, because we're only affecting 10% of the watershed. If you change the other one, that's for the whole watershed. So it would be effectively a lot different. It's a different difference. So then the last thing I wanted to talk about was this housing needs assessment that was done back in, well, it was delivered to the county. You guys ordered it. Bowen National Research did it. It's a housing needs assessment back in 2019. The overall results were that the county we have a county-wide housing shortage. So in every single category: rental housing for low-income seniors and family, high need; affordable workforce rental housing, high need; moderate rate rental housing, high need; entry-level for sale housing, high need; moderate and high-end modern for sale housing, high need; private pay assisted living senior care, high need. That is something that I heard. I never heard this directly, but I heard that the consultant that did this commented that he had never seen a housing need like we have here in this county. And so this report indicated some housing strategies that the county might take on in order to do that. And I won't read all of those strategies out.
We got about 30 seconds.
But the one that I will say is, it says, consider implementing modifying policies to encourage or support the development of new residential units. The first thing they recommend is the local governments should support housing policies such as increasing residential density. So there it is right there in the report that was done. And you know, I think this is going to be good for the county if we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyone else wishing to speak for or against case 2115? Request to amend section 12-134 of the Cleveland County Unified Development Ordinance. Please come forward. And seeing no one, I am going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, have you got any questions, comments? If not,
so Mr. Chair, I have no questions. I would like to make a comment before I make a motion. So I would like to say to those here and to staff, I appreciate the work that you guys did. I don't know how much the other commissioners might have, but I know that I probably asked at least 12 to 15 questions since the end of last week to get a better grasp of what this meant and long-term what it meant for the county, and also from density standpoints, also protecting the county's water supply. So Brian, to you, Carrie, and your staff, appreciate you being responsive to getting those questions turned around as quick as possible. And with that, I'll move that we we approve the UDO amendments as presented.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, Chris, Now we have from the Planning Department, case 1216, request to rezone portion of parcel 24702 at 1650 North Post Road from general business to residential.
Okay, so we have our third request for a rezone. The petitioner is the same petitioner that asked for the text amendment to the Watershed, Oak Mills LLC, and they're asking to rezone about 9 acres from general business to residential. The property is located along Deerbrook Drive, which is a neighborhood just off of North Post Road, north of Shelby. It adjoins the Deerbrook Golf Course and the old Challenger 3 Recreation Center. The difference between these two zoning districts with general business, you can imagine it allows for most any type of commercial, retail, office, and even some light, very light manufacturing type of uses. The requested zoning district of residential allows for it's your most common residential zoning district, allows for single-family dwellings, manufactured housing, and multifamily housing such as townhomes and apartments. This area, it's along North Post Road and within the Deerbrook neighborhood. So you've got some mixed uses along North Post Road. You've got the Oak Mills property, which was the former Challenger 3 property. You've got the golf course, and then you have a lot of single-family dwelling uses in this area, both along North Post Road and within the Deerbrook community. The surrounding zoning in this area is general business, which is represented by the red color, and restricted residential, which is represented by the yellow. I've told you the allowed uses in residential and general business. The difference between the plain residential and the restricted residential is manufactured housing and multifamily housing. The yellow area, restricted residential, only allows for single-family residences. This, and if Henry, if you can pull up the plan showing the area that they're requesting to rezone. Just want to get that on the screen as well. Here we've got a aerial photo that's outlined in blue showing this area that they're asking to rezone. It's about, like I said, it's about 9 acres, and it's a portion of a larger tract of land that made up the old Challenger 3 property. This case was presented to the planning board. The planning board voted 5-1 to recommend approving. They felt like the requested zoning district of residential was more in harmony with the surrounding uses of single-family residences within the Deerbrook community. So the planning board felt like the general business district would allow, the current district allows more intense uses that would be a more negative impact to the neighborhood, while the requested district of residential would allow more compatible uses compared to the neighborhood as opposed to the general business. And as I said, they voted 5-1 to approve recommendation of recommendation of approval. And that concludes that presentation, and I can answer any questions.
Commissioners have questions, comments? If not, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. So anyone wishing to speak for or against 1216, request to rezone portion of parcel 24702 at 1650 North Post Road from general business to residential, please come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Irene Toohey. My address is 12107 Woodcliff Court in Charlotte. My husband and I, Keith, are owners of Oak Mills. This was an email that my husband and I sent to a member of the Deerbrook community, Gene Ramsey, who has been a strong supporter of this project. He asked us to outline some key points so that he could share with others, and here's the contents of the email that we wrote. As we walked away from the zoning meeting last night, it was evident that several folks were not in support of our efforts to develop those 8 acres of our property. While we understand change can be hard for anyone, we have really thoughtfully approached this project while keeping in mind our property, the Deerbrook neighborhood, and the local community. We strongly felt and still do that our initiative to sell our land for high-end townhomes is the best possible outcome for all.
Sorry, can I just pull it down?
Yes.
The commissioners couldn't hear.
Sorry.
No,
Short.
you're good. I just want to make sure.
Sorry. We strongly felt and still do that our initiative to sell our land for high-end townhomes is the best possible outcome for all parties involved. Let me lay out the framework for our thought process. Oak Mills cannot continue to operate as is without an attempt to restructure debt. In examining our options, we felt that selling off that section of the property would be an effective strategy to minimize impact to the community while enabling us the ability to continue to run our business as it stands today. Without this calculated decision, we would be forced to close down the current operation and entertain offers that have already been made to us to develop the property on a commercial basis. For the betterment of everyone in this wonderful community, we have tried to avoid this endgame. What this would mean would be the following. The driving range, which is owned by Oak Mills, and the putting green would be closed as this section would be commercially developed and given its favorable topography and existing infrastructure. This would invariably have a negative impact on the Deerbrook Country Club and, for that matter, the neighborhood as a whole. As you're aware, customer and membership interest in the course becomes less desirable when they don't have a practice facility to work on their game. Now, I could be wrong, but to me, the perceived value of that neighborhood has strong attachments to the healthiness of the club and the course. Thus, the healthiness of the course and club helps maintain the value of homes. Again, we are trying to avoid this as it doesn't fit with our original vision as to why we originally acquired the property back in 2019 before COVID hit us hard. It is truly the last option, but unless we have cooperation from within Deerbrook, this will be an inevitable outcome as we shift our focus towards developing the property commercially. We have had multiple people interested in developing the land on both a commercial and residential basis. We actually had some out-of-state developers approach us about developing the entire 63-acre parcel. While we have listened, we did not want to react as we felt our negotiated proposal with Jason is much more favorable for the community and the course and the club. We also wanted to be thoughtful and align ourselves with a builder who we know and have complete confidence in. It was important for us to engage in this project with a local, trustworthy builder who is known to build high-quality homes and takes pride in his craftsmanship. As Jason laid out during his proposal, these are beautiful, single-story homes that have a strong price point and will be built with the highest quality of materials. It will also attract a demographic that will likely financially support both the golf course and the new restaurant. This is why we thought it would be a perfect marriage between us, Jason, and Deerbrook to develop a top-notch product that everyone would be proud of and support. There's a lot of conversation centered around the existing buffer that is there and what impact it would have if we place a development in its place. Please keep in mind the following. The current buffer that is there today, those ferns are simply there as a courtesy given the driving range. They are not a requirement per code as we have an intervening street between the residential district and our business district. Note, this was confirmed with Henry at Planning and Zoning. Understanding this, there is actually no true requirement that any screening or buffer is necessary. If that section along Deerbrook doesn't get developed residentially, it will essentially have zero barrier between your neighborhood and whatever was to come if we are forced to have to develop under general business zoning. Out of respect for the community and all the wonderful people that reside there, we
About
thought
30 seconds. Okay.
you'd appreciate that you could ultimately decide on what barrier would be between you and the rest of the parcel. Without it, the neighborhood will be exposed to having a complete visual that bumps right up against your street that will definitely be more of an eyesore than the current proposal to line the street with high-end townhomes. Two last points.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for or against?
Thank you, Commissioners. I really appreciate your time to stand before you, and I've actually taken the time to do some prepared statements. That way I can hopefully try and keep it short and concise. It's really to address a couple items that have come up based on my exploration and talking through this with numerous folks in the Deerbrook community. So here we go. I'd like to address the topic of conditional zoning, as it has been something mentioned to me during my many conversations with folks. People have inquired about making this a requirement for approval. While I understand one's interest in trying to control exactly what happens with the parcel being sold, I believe by adding these constraints and increasing the time, number of requirements, and additional expenditures required for final approval, we will likely jeopardize the deal and the developer will simply walk away. With that, I think collectively we all lose. The worst possible outcome for us all would be forced upon us and we'd be left with no choice but to have it developed on a commercial basis. I know people are concerned about the residential zoning classification, as it allows for slightly more leniency towards what can be built. This might cause some folks to become uncomfortable and even go so far as to begin to question the commitment Jason has made us all when revealing his plans to build high-end townhomes on the property. We understand that during times of change and uncertainty, we are all programmed to play out every conceivable what-if, worst-case scenario in an attempt to protect ourselves against any perceived threat, whether real or otherwise. Oftentimes, these thoughts distract us and make us lose focus on what the most likely and best outcome will be, and that is exactly the townhome plan that Jason has already discussed and showed everyone. In Jason, we have a very capable, trustworthy builder who has demonstrated to all of us the high standards and level of professionalism he holds himself accountable to on a daily basis. He has already proven himself, both personally and professionally, by building 20-plus homes in the neighborhood and is held in the highest regard by everyone I've spoken to and has earned their trust. He is investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in just purchasing the land, so you can imagine his desire and commitment towards building a top-end product is of the utmost importance to him. To think he would do anything less than that goes against the very reputation that he's worked so hard to build within this community. It would not be in his best interest, both financially and personally, to deviate from the current plan laid out before y'all. I'd like to provide an example of a concern that has been raised to us. Someone said, if we don't put a conditional zoning label on this, Jason could in theory turn around and place either mobile homes and or modular homes on this land, given the residential zoning classification it would receive. Again, when one spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to solely purchase only 8 acres of land, it would be economically unwise to use that property for anything other than high-end townhomes in an effort to receive a strong return on investment. Any other outcome would likely result in him losing money. To that end, and to provide a greater level of assurance to you all, we would like to offer to deed restrict the property against any manufactured homes. This should hopefully provide great comfort to many. As a sidebar, it is also important to note that this project, through this project, he is addressing both a county-wide housing crisis and, more importantly, what he views as an underserved townhome market. Many feel that by forcing a conditional zoning requirement on this project, it protects them from the minuscule chance that Jason were to ever decide to do something other than what he's previously described. What people might fail to realize is the following. Failure to approve the current zoning request will likely kill the deal. In doing that, the neighborhood now is certainly more vulnerable and exposed to the uncertainty that lies ahead with the general business zoning class. I can assure you that based on conversations we've held with interested parties to date, it will absolutely be much more of an eyesore from anything that could ever fall under the residential classification. In fact, as Deerbrook Drive is a public road, anyone developing the land that the current range occupies, which is the most desired piece, by the way, could add an entrance directly off of your street into their commercial development property. This would not only increase the unsightliness for the neighborhood, but it would dramatically increase the traffic flow way beyond the additional driveways that come with our current townhome proposal, which again has been another item of concern with folks is traffic. Think about that for 1 second.
About 30 seconds.
Yep. Any development, whether it be a strip mall or warehouse, can have an entrance and exit right off of Deerbrook Drive. Now talk about a traffic nightmare. Adding a few additional driveways via the townhome project would be a significantly better option in my opinion. As I expressed to folks on numerous occasions, we generally are trying to do what's in the best interest of the community, the neighborhood, and the clubhouse. So,
Thank you.
Can I get your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. It's Keith Toohey, 1650 North Coast Road, and I'm one of the owners of Oak Mills. Thank you. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against case 1216?
Thank you for recognizing me.
Name and address, please.
My name is Tony Sams at 114 Eagles Terrace in Shelby, North Carolina at Deerbrook. Okay. I assume that the list of concerns that was submitted in advance, such as traffic and congestion, 30 driveways in a short distance, safety, sidewalks, rainwater runoff, etc., will be acted upon. I also want to state that I personally do not object to this project and feel that it is a preferred alternative to other potential issues. One thing I should have mentioned is that I am one of the directors on our board of directors of our Property Owners Association. However, in light of the fact that a rezoning of the approximate 9 acres to residential, and it was just mentioned, allows for virtually any type of housing to be built on the property. And in spite of the fact that assurances have been made that the planned townhomes, triplexes if you wish, will adhere to all Deerbrook Design Review Board guidelines, it is critical that an agreement exist which places conditions on the approval of this zoning change so that nothing other than what is currently planned can be built on the property, or at least without Cleveland County Commissioners' permission. The 3 entities who have made this request are good people. They're good business people. I've come to know them pretty well over the last 2 or 3 weeks. But it is good business for all involved that an agreement on significant issues be formalized. It is not for a lack of trust of these individuals. This agreement that I refer to would allow for a number of protections. For instance, number 1, concerns of the Deerbrook community that non-conforming housing construction could occur for any number of reasons. For example, a rapidly changing housing market, a need to change course due to capital and profitability challenges, a business change of ownership, changing hands, different people, different players, and so forth. 2, concerns of the Deerbrook community that these new residents be governed by the same rules that currently exist to define what is allowed and not allowed as approved actions and uses of one's property. And 3, that they pay their proportionate share of expenses relating to things that benefit the entire Deerbrook community, such as street lamps, front entrance and common area maintenance and mowing, etc. We think these things are reasonable. We should, and I believe we will, welcome these new residents as members of the Deerbrook community and the Deerbrook Property Owners Association. Much of this has already been verbally agreed upon, so should not significantly delay the transactions of the involved parties, as I see it. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in front of this commission.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against case 1216?
Good evening. Good evening. Bill McCarter, 107 Plantation Court. And I would also like to disclose that I'm a property owner in Deerbrook also, and I wholeheartedly support this rezoning request. What I want to talk about is two issues, spot zoning and conditional zoning. Spot zoning is not illegal, which I'm sure you're aware of, but in our land use plan, strategy RB1 states that you should encourage quality multifamily development by amending the zoning regulations to address allowable densities. And I think that's what we're trying to do tonight. This 8-acre rezoning request will provide a great transition between single family in the Deerbrook community and the general business in the old Challenger 3. That's what we need, is that transitional zoning. It acts as a buffer. We've been working with Keith and his wife on this zoning proposal, and there was a lot of discussion and choices between traditional zoning and conditional district zoning. So why did we not choose conditional zoning? Flexibility. Conditional zoning requires a very specific site plan showing not only building footprints, but driveways, sidewalks, etc. Engineered site plans and soil tests are very expensive for the developer. The number of units that are dictated by the number of bedrooms permitted in the soil test cause constant change in that site plan. Each unit will essentially be a custom home in this case. And Jason's done this in my neighborhood in Magnolia. Each of those townhomes he's built is a little different. The clients want something a little bigger, they may want something a little smaller, so that footprint changes every time. And we're going to be coming back to you every building for a change in that site plan. Keith has already addressed the manufactured homes. Of course, yes, they are allowed in regular old residential zoning, but we can take care of that through deed restrictions very easily. What about traffic? That issue always comes up. Driveway permits are issued by the Department of Transportation, so that's not a purview of the county to begin with. Traffic's going to be traffic, no matter what kind of development you put there, and it can be a lot worse. That's all I've got. You got any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 1216, please come forward and state your name and address.
Spencer Borders, 1101 East Sanders in Shelby. I'm gonna make it really quick. I think we're trying to promote growth in the county. This is just another way to do that. We're on a micro, we're doing it on a micro level here with a specific project. Like we had on our site plan that we showed to the Deerbrook community. This is going to be a 30 unit development. The price range is going to be about $300,000 per unit. So quick math says $9 million tax base added to the county. And from what I hear talking to elected officials, more tax base makes all the problems that we have in the county a little easier to deal with. Growth is about rooftops. We got to have more people here to get more services that everybody wants instead of driving outside the county and spending your dollars elsewhere. The way to avoid that is to have more people living here. The way to do that is to grow rooftops. So I just wanted to put an economic spin on it. Like everybody said, everybody that's worked on this project, we're men of our word. Everybody wants to see an outcome here that's going to be better for Deerbrook and not worse. So thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Jason Lowry, 1226 Newcrest Lane, Shelby, North Carolina. I guess I would be considered the developer they keep talking about. And Jason, who she referred kindly to, I appreciate that. So to start off, townhomes are high demand. I'm getting a lot of calls. People really want them. We're actually working on a project 3 times this size beside a Riverbend golf course, which has been annexed into the city. So that's moving along, and we'll be doing that there. That's going to be a much slower project, though, because the millions of dollars it's going to take to develop the property. The great thing about this Deerbrook property, it is there, the road is there, we can hit the ground running, we can have units under construction within a month. I hear the homeowners' concerns. I have built, I think, 25 homes in Deerbrook, so I think a lot of those folks, I'm not about to ruin my reputation. My business is word of mouth, and that's 25 people who recommend me. So whatever I do is going to be the right thing. I'm 100% fine with deed restriction to make sure that it can't be anything other than what I'm saying. But the part he's talking about the, for me to do all the engineering, site plan to do the conditional use is enough money that it probably would prevent me from proceeding. So that is a fact. If there's another way around that or something, I mean, I'm willing to talk. I definitely want to be a part of Deerbrook. I don't think it can be the same HOA. I'd be fine maybe a sub-HOA. We definitely would be willing to help with expenses for the entrance and all that kind of things. Our restrictions are likely going to be a lot more restrictive than theirs, because with townhomes and those people living closely, they have to have more restrictions on them than a single-family dwelling. So, and we are planning on maintaining the whole thing, all the property will be maintained by the HOA. So it's going to be a nice manicured, good-looking property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against case 1216?
Rita Sism, 137 Deerbrook Drive. And so I live on the road that the construction will be on. And I just want to see, I know in doing some businesses myself, you would require a burn to be there beside or behind the property where there was residential. So I don't know if there could be any way that there would be put in a requirement for them to put behind the townhomes a burn and down the rest of the road where there is one now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak for or against case 1216, request to rezone portion of parcel 24702 at 1650 North Post Road from general business to residential, please come forward, state your name. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. And commissioners, questions, comments?
Sure, I'd like for Chris Martin to come back up. And my question to Chris is, in the rezoning request that's there, what restrictions can the commissioners put on it?
Essentially none. The type of request is a general rezoning request where they have not provided a formal site plan. And you've heard tonight the other option of conditional request and that's the option where a board would have the ability to apply reasonable conditions to a project. But as submitted, the way that this amendment request has been submitted, there's no options for commissioners to apply any conditions.
What all would be involved? I know they were talking about how much the expense of doing a conditional. Can you touch base on that?
So in order to apply for the conditional type of rezoning, our code says you've got to provide a plan to planning staff. And that plan, the purpose of that plan would basically be to show that your project's going to be compliant with any of our development standards. and also show the board and the community that's interested how this property is going to be developed, basically to show compatibility. So I like to think of those two things. The requirement of a land use or a site plan is, the purpose is to show compliance with regulations and compatibility with the area around it.
But they have to meet the developmental standards regardless, right?
Right, they would have to meet the developmental standards regardless. With the conditional type of request, they're showing you up front how they're wanting to develop the property.
Would they have to come back every time like he was talking about if they changed one?
It would depend on the significance of the change.
So it's possible is what?
There's a possibility, yes. I think from a staff perspective, if we're reviewing a plan and a footprint moves a couple feet but still complies with the development standards, then we're not going to bring that back to the board. But if it's a change that may impact a surrounding property, then staff would feel like that would need to be a board decision to approve that change. So to answer your question, it depends. It depends on the significance of the change and how it would impact the surrounding properties.
That question, when he said he would rest on the deed limitation, we can't even request that, can we?
No, so deed restrictions would be a private party agreement, and that would not be a condition that the commissioners could apply.
Can you tell us about how long it would put them, if it's approved like it is today versus if they would have to get a conditional, what's the time limit and the difference in expense?
Not sure about expense, but as far as time goes, it's on our end, we could schedule a public hearing for the first meeting in September. I think on the developer's end, a lot of it would depend on the how quickly their designer or surveyor can modify that plan and present that to us.
Could we allow them to modify the plan they've already given us and them not incur extra expense as far as buying new, coming in and starting from scratch, or are they gonna have to come in and basically start all over?
Like transfer what they got?
So to understand your question, you're asking, could they modify the site plan or
Right.
map that they've given us without a lot of expense?
Right.
I think a lot of that would depend on where or how confident the developer would be in the placement of these structures and the size and dimensions of the structures and driveways. So I think that question would probably be better answered by the developer and how confident they would be in where they're going to place the structures and driveways.
Where you've looked at the plans, how close are they to what you would need for a conditional permit? Let's put it that way.
So from what we've been presented, we would need some additional information. Basically, we need to know the size of the buildings, the location and size or dimensions of the driveways, and we would need calculations showing how much of the property would be developed so that we can see that it would comply with any watershed or land development regulations.
Can we ask the developer more stuff? Is that okay?
Yeah, we can bring the developer back.
Yes.
So how hard would that be for you?
I guess my understanding, it'd be the extent of the site plan. So this project being on a septic system, this is gonna have to be a very specialized engineered septic system, because basically each building, 3 units will share. We've had some preliminary soil testing done, but to do the full-blown site plan, it's literally like 15 to 20 grand for the additional soil testing, the engineered septic systems, the surveying, and all that kind of stuff. So, and it'd take probably 90 days is what they're saying. We do have a contract on the property. Due diligence is up quickly. I don't know. He'd have to speak to, if I go past that, is he gonna honor the deal? I don't know. But yeah, that's the biggest question. And then I guess, like I said, how specific that site plan has to be. If there's any, if it could be something like we have now, put the building dimensions on it and go, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But if we have to do the full-blown, figure everything out up front, it's gonna be a lot of money and a lot of time.
So if we were to approve this tonight, is it still gonna take you 90 days to go through the septic and?
No, we can close right away on the property because this is the last thing we need, and then we can be submitting plans to the county and getting ready to go.
And that you may not know, but, so did y'all meet with most of the people at Deerbrook?
Yeah, we actually had a town hall meeting and invited the whole community to come speak and hear about everything at the clubhouse, I think 2 Mondays ago, before the planning meeting.
Well, you saying you already got engineering for the septic?
No, sir, I don't. I'm saying
Yeah,
I would have to get that to go to the next step.
Yeah, because that's gonna
Yes,
still
sir.
take the same amount of time, or in either case.
Right, but I just didn't want to spend all that money and then it still not get approved, so.
Any more questions? Thank you. Commissioners, any more discussion or a motion to approve or deny?
You know, just in making a comment, I didn't hear anyone say they disapproved the project. Only comments I got, even in emails and letters, they wanted us to assure the conditions and what they built on it, which we can't do. So, you know, I guess that's the dilemma we got, because like I say, everybody would like to see the project, they just want to have conditions put on it. And I think the best thing that could happen if they do the deed restrictions on that, and we'll have to depend on that with their word of what they're saying. So, and in the event that we deny it tonight, very possible that there may be something there undesirable. So I guess that's the dilemma I'm in right now, that I felt like that I would, as many people as here, I would hear more for and against than what I heard tonight. That leads me to believe that I would make a motion that we approve the rezoning with hopes that the property owner would follow through with what he says he would do.
Should we have a second?
So, yeah, I'll second that based on the fact that preparing for this, taking numerous, several phone calls, reading the emails, and also doing ample research. I also noticed today, I asked the staff today, what the change, because I understand this property was recently rezoned, so it was rezoned on February the 5th of 2019 from restricted residential to general business. And at that point, there were 2 speakers, and both of those were in favor of that change. This seems to be, even with the issues that you spoke of and the questions that we had, seems to be a little more protective for a restricted residential neighborhood than what this change was in 2019. So with that, I would second your motion.
Good enough. We got a motion and a second. All in favor? The motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. We'll move now to the regular agenda, sale of county-owned property, and I'm going to recognize Martha Thompson, Deputy County Attorney.
Good evening. I do have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to be working from. And back in early June, y'all approved presenting for bid 5 pieces of property that the county does own. I don't know how to work this. And we put them out for bid. We had some offers on each of these pieces of property, and we put them out for upset bid by publishing them. We received 1 upset bid, and now we're here to review those with you. And we're going to go through them one by one. The first one is on Enola Drive. This is the location, and the property is, well, you can see the little black outline. Hold on, learn how to drive this thing. Right there is where it's located, and it's in the same location around this area. Here, there are no structures at any of these properties. They're all residential pieces, actually. And this is the history of the property. We acquired it through a foreclosure process. Nobody bid on it at auction, and so we ended up taking it. At the time, you can see the taxes that were owed were a little over $1,200. It cost us a little over $1,200 to foreclose, and so the amount of money that we have in it is about $2,500, and the tax value is almost $4,000. The tax payments on this piece of property, if someone bought it now, would be less than $80 a year. The offer on it is $1,650. We would be taking a loss of almost $900 if we accepted this bid. And it would take us over 11 years to recoup our costs in it. Withers Street, another residential piece of property. You can see here is where it's located, which is right here. And this is its history. We acquired this by foreclosure 5 years ago in 2016. And the taxes that were owed at the time were $283 and change. Cost us $344 to foreclose. So we have over $600 in it. We've been offered $1,700, which is very close to the tax value of $1,881. And we would recoup not only our cost, but we would have a gain of over $1,000. That would be county money. That's the Wither Street. Gorell, we actually have 2 parcels here. I'll show them to you one by one. That one there, which is about here. And we acquired all these by foreclosures, but 5 years ago, we're owed over $1,300 on that. The majority of that is the fees that it cost to foreclose because nobody bid on it. And the only offer we have it on is $102, where we would lose over $1,200 on it. It would take, at $79 a year for tax payment, it would take us, I don't know the math on that, Brian, over a decade to recoup our costs for that. And you'll see that the tax value is more than 10 times what's been offered on this piece. This is the second piece of property. It's neighbors, the one I just showed you on Gorell Street, and we have a similar scenario. It's actually the same person who's offered on this. It's $210 has been offered. We take a loss of over $1,500. You'll see the taxes and fees collected collectively would be the county has in it over $1,325. And these are all direct expenses I'm showing you. It's not the indirect expenses related to staff costs either, and it would take more than a decade to recoup those costs also. The last one is on East Ross Grove Road, right here. We also acquired this one by foreclosure, and we've had this one for 9 years, almost 10 years. Just under $2,000 the county has in it as direct costs. Tax value is almost $12,000. We've been offered less than 10% of that, we'd lose over $1,000, and it would take us 9 to 10 years to recoup that as well. My recommendation on these pieces of property is all of the ones for which we would obtain less than the tax value, less than our costs in it, and it would take us years to recoup. I would recommend that we reject those offers at this time, but accept the one on Wither Street, for which we would acquire a gain of $1,000, just over $1,000. I would also recommend that y'all resolve to allow staff to go back and solicit bids that not only recoup our costs, but have some reasonable relationship that's close to tax value, so we can get these, so the county isn't losing money for its citizens spending money on these foreclosures. What happens in a foreclosure process is when somebody doesn't pay their taxes, they're given an opportunity to pay. If they don't, we go through the process of filing a lawsuit. We've got to pay for that. We've got to go through that process. Then we can acquire it by auction, but we try to seek somebody to buy the property. And if nobody comes forward and bids or bids sufficient amount to pay our costs at that time, we're the recipient of the property, which is not our goal. Our goal is to sell it and recoup our costs and get them back on the tax books. But if we start accepting bids that are less than what we have in it, we've thwarted the process of auction. And why would anybody bid on property if they can come back later and get it for something less than we have in it? So my recommendation is to accept Wither Street, reject the rest, allow staff to go back and solicit bids and come back to you with bids that do that have a positive attrition rather than negative. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You say you want to take it back, reevaluate it. Why not take it back and reevaluate it? Because I know that we've got staff cutting grass all summer long and determine how much it costs us, because you don't send this one person out, you got 2 persons out there, and generally it's gonna take you an hour to 2 hours the time you get there and back, and figure out about how much it costs us each year to cut grass, and figure that into it, and see if it wouldn't be better for us to let it go at a little less price than below what we got in it, because that could recuperate some of our return by looking at that. Because we're responsible to cut the grass, keep it up, maintain it, and look, see what we're spending on maintenance of it, and sort of figure that in.
We can add the cost of maintenance into our costs when we're looking at it and evaluating. We certainly can do that. And I will comment, although I wasn't here, my understanding is from the history of what was going on for many years, the county was acquiring property through this method where people were not paying their taxes and nobody would bid on it, and there was a stockpile, and those properties we had to get them back on the tax books, and the county wasn't going to use most, if not all, of that property. And so that had happened for several years, and we are down to about 10 pieces of property that we own. So we've done staff's done a great job of disposing of that property. But now we're at a point where we need to be reevaluating and saying, property in Cleveland County is going for a premium right now, and why would we fire sale these? So.
And I don't think any of the properties that we got right now are big enough to put a house on it.
I think they are. All of, most, if not all of these, I think, did have structures on them at one time. And there was at least one that I think the county was involved in the demolition, based on the history of what I understand. So they wouldn't be large houses, but yeah.
Or maybe consider that like Habitat needs a lot or something like that, that we can work with Habitat to establish a home, put a home on it that would bring their property back up quick in value, to explore those areas right there to see if it couldn't offset some of the cost.
that
So-
certainly
So
staff
I
can
think
look
part
at.
of Martha's recommendation was to allow staff to go back and renegotiate or seek another offer, but to your point, you and I had talked about that before, and I have reached out to leadership with Habitat and want to have that conversation.
So basically, right now, we just need to make a motion to give the go-ahead on Withers and let everybody reevaluate the others.
I think one piece of property is going ahead and let it go, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes,
Make that
so
motion.
it would be to accept Withers, reject the others, and to instruct us to attempt to renegotiate those. We would have to go through the upset bid process again, but I would hope that we'd have at least one of those pieces of property to bring back to you pretty quickly.
So you're looking for a motion?
On parcel 2706.
Okay, we'll exclude.
To accept that one.
2706, whatever excluded, and then take the rest of them back for reconsideration.
Right.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Okay, thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna have a revaluation recap by Brian Epley, the county manager.
Thank you, Commissioner Bridges, and I'll be swift. I simply wanted to spend a few moments as we've concluded the reappraisal process. Essentially, the Board of E&R has formally adjourned, and I'm pleased to report that although it's been a process that started 3 or 4 years ago, we ended up in a really, really good spot. And I was doing the math. As you all remember from the budget presentation that we just worked through, the FY21 tax base in Cleveland County, when all sources are considered, not just real, but when all sources are considered, is about $10.3 billion. Our budget, and that's where we pro forma it being, and we missed it by about 0.4%. Now that all the appeals process have closed, the Board of E&R has adjourned, and we're able to actually run hard numbers as of today. We missed it by about 0.37% or about 3,700ths of 1%. So a process that worked, a process that is required as part of managing local government, managing county government. As I was preparing to come down and run through these few slides that we have today, the one thing that I wish we had done differently, because I know that there's a lot of questions around reappraisal, why we do it, how we do it, and those are some of the things I'm going to try to talk about. I simply wish we would have done it higher on the agenda so we could have had a few more of our citizens here to hear that. So, hopefully, there's still some folks that are watching online, and then for the board to be informed about how we closed out so that you can answer questions that come to you. But I have 3 very simple objectives. One is to recap the timeline and the process. What are the mechanics? What are the fundamental principles that we follow as we work through the reevaluation process? Summarize the results, and then lastly, benchmark with our peers. Because this is not only a requirement for Cleveland County, but it's a requirement for all the municipalities inside Cleveland County and all of our surrounding counties as well. And I'll just point out instances like tonight where we sold our third speculative shell building. It's going to generate $21 million in capital investment. So that urgency and that vision and economic development demonstrated by this Board of Commissioners, along with your fiscal policy surrounding long-term sustainability and planning, re-engineering, lean operations, have really put you in a position to capitalize during reval in a way that benefits all of our citizens in Cleveland County. So this slide simply is an optic to demonstrate that revaluation is not, although it's a snapshot in time as of January 1st of the year to reval, it's really been a almost 4-year process. We concluded our last revaluation in 2016, in which we saw property values cumulatively across Cleveland County dip about 3.6%. The county was able to maintain a steady tax rate at that time of 57 cents. That was about a $1.6 million revenue cut at that point. But we immediately began working on the 2017 reval process that concluded, again, January 1st of 2021. I would point out, and I'll demonstrate it later, that process was all done in-house. And in the world of appraisals, there are private companies that do that. And when you look at the number of parcels that we have, especially improved parcels in Cleveland County, The fact that Sherry and her team and the dedicated folks downstairs were able to conduct that reappraisal in-house saved Cleveland County taxpayers about $1.2 million. Most recently, as you can see on the timeline, this past week or about a week and a half ago, tax bills were mailed out, and that was kind of the final stage in the process. Here you can just see the kind of the history of our change in value on the left. The orange bar there in 2016 was our last reappraisal where we went back, and then we spent about 4 years recovering from this value loss until we got to 2021. The illustration on the right has been a history of Cleveland County's tax rate going all the way back to 1997. You can see that the tax rate has changed most recently July 1st of 2021, where it continued to decline down to 54.75. And all of that, again, has been predominantly tied back to economic development, tax-based growth, and most recently the intentional efforts of this board to reduce costs, operational costs, and right-size county government. So why did we do a reappraisal in 2021? Well, there's a variety of reasons, but most simply, the North Carolina General Statute require that North Carolina counties and municipalities conduct reappraisals of real property. I think it's important to remember that we have 4 centers inside of our total property tax base. Real property is the majority, but it's only one component. The Department of Revenue that governs tax assessments and provides that oversight recommends that all counties in North Carolina do this at least every 4 years. That's a recommendation that's moving towards a requirement, so we expect to see that as we move forward. Last year would have been our 4th year in 2020. However, we were working through, as the board is aware, a comprehensive ERP project that included software specific to our tax department, and we decided to delay and postpone that reval so that we could move through that. Well, there's been a couple counties in North Carolina that have really had some pretty challenging outcomes as they've tried to do tax software conversions at the same time of conducting a mass reappraisal. So the other, aside from the time gap that may trigger a revaluation, the other thing is more scientific and more technical, again, administered through the North Carolina Department of Revenue. There's something called a sales ratio, and a sales ratio is a measurement of what are the county's tax values as it compares to the market. So in an environment where the market's decreasing or contracting or expanding and property values are rising, certainly what we've been experiencing here, you can get an disproportionate sales ratio where your tax values do not appropriately align. And the Department of Revenue says if you're more than 15% out, either under or over, then there's a requirement to do a reappraisal. And you can see here, we did a reval in 2016, which put us at 100%. That means that our tax values properly align with the market value. And since that point, market value has outpaced tax values substantially, which was one of the requirements that led to a 2021 reappraisal. I think one of the most important things for our community to understand is that ultimately what is most impactful economically at the individual level, which is the tax liability, is derived from 2 variables, the assessed property value being one of those and the tax rate being the other. So back in February when our notice of values went out, a lot of people saw an increase in their property value. Cumulatively across the county, the average was about 12%, but it wasn't until your June 1st commissioner meeting in which you set the tax rate, and all of the other municipalities and taxing agencies in Cleveland County had to do the same thing. But it takes both sides to really impact that tax liability, and the commissioners obviously were able to reduce the tax rate to a manageable level. Here's just what I mentioned earlier, the fact that we did it in-house saved our taxpayers about $1.2 million. And this mass appraisal included 57,000 parcels, some improved, some not, and cumulatively about 700 neighborhoods. And this is, again, a really, really complex process. I'm really pleased with our team. The process also included us determining some table of values. The Board of Commissioners approved that back in December. What I'd like to point out here is, again, when I look regionally at some of our other peer comparisons, and you come over to how and what they based their square footage on, you can see Cleveland County, we did our 2021 reappraisal at about $77 per square foot. And anyone who's done building lately or bought real property, I think that they would agree that that's a very conservative approach, especially compared to some of our peers. Gaston as high as 98, even Lincoln and Rutherford higher than us. So we were able to work through, as the Board of E&R went into session February 12th and formally adjourned on June 28th. We worked through about 1,200 appeals, a little less than 1,200. All of those have been satisfied at this point as we closed out the process and again begin our new FY22 year. A quick recap of tax rates in Cleveland County. We had a few folks that actually decreased the tax rate. The Cleveland County government, our organization, was able to lower the tax rate via the Board of Commissioners' direction from 57 to 54.75 cents. That's a 2.25 cent tax rate decrease and below revenue neutral. The school system, which is the tax rate is set by this board as well, also reduced its tax rate by a cent. So this board collectively lowered the tax rate to all citizens in Cleveland County by 3.25 cents, and that was equivalent to revenue neutral. Both the City of Shelby and Boiling Springs were able to reduce their tax rate, the City of Shelby by ½ cent, the Town of Boiling Springs by 2 cents, but neither of those were calculated to equate to revenue neutral. And again, we've talked about what that calculation looks like. We had two entities that increased taxes, both Grover and Waco. Grover went up about a cent, and the Town of Waco went up 3 cents from 20 to 23. And I think 12 taxing entities that remained flat from what they were in 2020. A more broad perspective of, again, what our similarly situated organizations do. So these other counties, again, have to provide the same level of services that Cleveland County does, meaning they have public health, they have social services, they have law enforcement, they have jails, they have things that are societally critical that also cost a tremendous amount of resources to maintain and operate. So I wanted to reflect on what their last revaluation year was, what their pre-reappraisal tax rate, and then what their current tax rate is. And you can see, again, I think for two specific reasons, the success and the vision of economic development and the commitment to right sizing and lean operations have really put Cleveland County in a position to be as aggressive as you were in setting your tax rate at 54.75, which was again below revenue neutral for the upcoming year. Commissioner Bridges, that is a very short recap of a highly successful reevaluation process. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I again just commend the board for your hard work.
Questions, comments? Well, certainly appreciate all the hard work. This didn't come easy. For you that don't know, Brian's on vacation right now. We appreciate him being here tonight. Okay, I think we have some board appointments, and I'm gonna ask the clerk.
Mr. Chair, Board, we'll go very quickly. Our first one is the Cleveland County Adult Care Home Advisory Board. You have the list in front of you. Please make note that you'll need to appoint 3 people with a 3-year term set to expire June 30th, 2024, and the second name on the list is supposed to be Tina, not Time.
Okay, commissioners, do we?
I would like to nominate Jason Aker, Tina McNally, and Janet
Torgerson. Yes, ma'am.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Our last board for the evening is the Cleveland County Nursing Home Advisory Board. At this time, you'll need to appoint 2 people for a 3-year term set to expire June 30th, 2024.
Commissioners have a.
Bill, I would like to nominate Maggie Andre and Wanda Robinson.
Second.
Thank you, and all in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us down to commissioner reports. Has anybody got anything they'd like to report?
I'd like to go. It's been a long week.
Okay. I'd just like to thank the staff for all the hard work. We've had a long year and a half, and that looks like COVID might be turning back around at us, so just everybody be smart. Staff have anything?
I just want to thank staff for all the help tonight. It was new for us, and until this might be our new normal, till our numbers go back down. So just thank staff and our citizens for being patient and understanding as we're working through this process.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion to recess to reconvene until Friday, August 27th, 10 a.m. at the Earl Scruggs Center located at 103 South Lafayette Street for Commissioners' Work Session.
So moved.
All in favor? Thank y'all for being here tonight.